Hi, I'm Dr. Guy Reekman, the Chancellor at Life University and the Executive Director of the Midtown Clinic for Vital Life Health Centers, a really unique center, about 17,000 square feet here in Midtown Atlanta, that has chiropractic, functional neurology, and the other half of the building is a relationship we have with the Atlanta Birth Center and care in that area, all of it oriented towards a more sensitive, patient-centered, non-surgical, non-medical, non-drug intervention. And of course, with that, we have certainly backup when necessary for people that need those kinds of things. But we always are starting with the idea that the body is an intelligent, self-developing, self-healing, self-maintaining mechanism that in most cases is smarter than the doctors. Think about it. The greatest scientist in the world is yet to create a living cell from scratch. Your body's creating 100,000 of them every second that you're sitting here. So it's just a place that has a great respect for patients and their bodies and the natural healing process. And we're here interviewing today my good friend J.C.Smith, one of the most prolific writers, not only in chiropractic, but about our healthcare system. And one of the things that we want to talk about today is how a patient's opportunities to have access to various types of healthcare have been narrowed down because of control by our media, not only by the medical community, but by the people that shore them up, which is Big Pharma, and literally can dictate who is on, who is off shows, what's said, who the hosts are, etc. So Dr. Smith has been doing a lot of research. I want to pick up with just a couple of facts and then we'll see where we go. One of them is you did a study on how much time was devoted to medicine versus chiropractic on National Public Radio, yes. NPR. And let's start off with that because I thought it was one of the most interesting points in your book about the war on the media war on chiropractic. Yes.
And I love NPR, but I noticed I've been listening to it for 30 years that rarely did I hear chiropractic. All this research, this paradigm shift in the science, yet I didn't hear it. They would even bring up like the VA issue. Now patients are suffering opioids, and most had back pain. I said, well, that's our step. They should be talking about us. So I did a little research and found out I took 6 of the most popular programs that I listened to, Science Friday, All Things Considered and such, and they had produced over 250,000 segments on all other programs. So I typed in keyword chiropractic. Guess how many times it came up? Less than 20.
Which out of 250,000.
Yes, and that equated to 0.0006% of the time.
Right.
Now we're talking about back pain is the #1 disabling condition in the nation, the military, the workplace, now in the world. It's a $177 billion industry annually. It's been shown drugs, shots, and surgeries don't work for 90% of these cases. We do work for them,
right. And
we don't get a plug. So I write letters to him. What the hell's going on? Why aren't you talking? Why the boycott? Well, I found out why. I heard that they talked about Robert Woods Johnson Foundation's their big sponsor, and they give millions a year. Well, that's a subsidiary of the Johnson & Johnson pharmaceutical who produces OxyContin. So right. Conflict of interest.
Right. Amazing. And and it doesn't just stop with NPR.
Oh, yes.
We see it. So I know that you've had a number of interactions with Sanjay Gupta at CNN, right? Who every night is out there handing out advice on what people should do with their families, their children's health care, and obviously not always in line with the best evidence and the best research and the best approach for people, but very narrow in their perspective.
Yeah, I first confronted him when he put out in 2008 that chiropractic was causing hundreds of strokes annually. Well, the stats don't show that. You know, it's 1 in 5.85 million people. Yet he made it seem like it was an epidemic. And
right.
so
and even with stroke, they found out the percentage of stroke in the population is higher than that figure, right? So you might even argue statistically that chiropractic's preventing to a large degree stroke. And I know that it's been a big issue, especially with the Katie May, the Playboy money that they said had just visited a chiropractor before her stroke that killed her. They later came out, of course, they never go back and publish this later, but later came out and found out that it was related to a whole bunch of other things, not her chiropractic care.
Pre-existing.
Yeah, she fell off a ladder. She had pre-existing things that they should have identified ahead of time.
Another conflict of interest, aside from working for the pharmaceutical industry, which is why he'll never talk about a non-drug solution, But that was my whole premise in that book is, when was the last time you've seen an in-depth, fair and balanced article about the benefits chiropractic brings to an ailing society? Never. Only when it's in a gotcha, like Katie May's. Even when Dr. Oz, who likes us, he had a program about her, and it was during Sweeps Week. And the content of the program was good. The chiropractor, the neurologist, and he himself, great, fair, and balanced. But the gotcha headline, if you recall, was, "Can your chiropractor kill you?"
Right, right.
And what do people remember? Not the good content, but the gotcha headline.
Right.
But as I was saying, another conflict of interest that the public doesn't know about, Sanjay Gupta, he works over here at Emory University, where Emory has its spine center. It's run by Dr. Scott Bowden, who was one of the original researchers, the original, in 1990, that did MRI studies on asymptomatic patients. And he found bad discs.
Patients without pain,
Yeah.
right, without symptoms.
And he found they too had degenerative disc disease. By the time you're 50 years old, there's an 80% chance you're going to have DDD, yet you have no pain. And yet, even though he works elbow to elbow with Scott Bowden, and this is, what, 27-year-old research, he's never mentioned that at all. And so I've written to him and said, why are you withholding this valuable information? And it wasn't just Bowden's research. Mayo Clinic 2 years ago came out with its systematic review of 33 similar studies saying the same thing. Just because you have a bad disc does not mean you need surgery, because as we know, most back pain is joint dysfunction.
Right.
That's why adjustments, restoring joint play helps. And that came out of the Wilk trial. And yet that's rarely mentioned to people. So when we say we treat back pain, they don't even know how we're doing it. I say it's the joints. I actually quiz my patients on how many joints there are in the spine. Want me to ask you?
Yeah, no. I'm sure the average person would probably say 24 or 48 because of the number of vertebrae that there are, but it's in the hundreds.
Most people don't even know the spine has joints because they're oriented in the medical paradigm. Pulled muscle, slip disc, take drugs, back surgery. That's what they know. And I say, no, according to the leading researchers, it really depends on who's counting, I think. It's 361.
Right.
That blows people away. But when they understand that bad joints cause your problem and adjustments, exercise, and all that we subscribe, that's what helps them. But with Sanjay Gupta, I've written to him. I said, why is it that you're not revealing this major study and revelation about back pain in your CNN, about your own colleague at Emory University? Right. And I don't get a response, of course. And then I was branded that I was a troublemaker, and they actually banned me at CNN now. How many people can say that with pride?
Well, right. Not that you were actually ever in, right? But you've been banned in case you might be at some point down the road, right? Yeah. And you know what? And so withholding information like that, or at the very least by omission or even diverting some of the information, has a huge impact on people, because how many people have gone for back surgery and we know statistically come out worse than when they went in? Most people think, well, it's a very small chance I'll come out worse, but that in fact is not the statistics.
Yeah, actually there was a study done 2 years ago on 1,000 workman's comp cases that had spinal fusion. And they found that 75% of them could not return to work after 2 years, which seems like a long time. And the 25% that did return to work were still taking opioids, which means they're working impaired. And there's been other research disproving the disc theory. Even the North America Spine Society came out with a study showing how chiropractic helps spinal stenosis, how chiropractic can actually, in cases of true disc herniation causing sciatica, they determine that 60% of those cases can be helped through spinal manipulation. Yet no one's telling the public that. And actually the NASS also came up with their own guidelines that saying 2 to 4 weeks of chiropractic care, 5 to 10 visits before you even consider drug shots and surgeries. Right. When the North America Spine Society is making these big recommendations, you think the world would know because people like Sanjay Gupta should be telling them. But they're not. They're suppressing all of that. Even the Commission on Accreditation that made chiropractic taboo, last year they came out with their updated recommendations. And at the top of the list, spinal manipulation. Right. So this whole paradigm shift has happened. It's just that the public isn't being told.
Yeah, and which is one of the reasons why we're having our conversation today, and one of the purposes for Vital Life Health Center to provide people information so they can make more rational choices about their health care. Probably wrapping up this section, I remember the first study I ever saw on this came out of New Zealand decades ago, and it showed they took 1,996 people that had hot mechanical low back pain. They put half under chiropractic care and half under medical care. The medical patients were back to work in 25.56 days at a cost of $1,569. The chiropractic patients were back to work in 6.8 days at a cost of $392. So, and that study, that statistic, about 20% less cost and 5 times faster getting back to work. Almost every study I've seen in the decade since has borne that out within a couple of statistical points. So while people may relate to chiropractic as a back treatment, and certainly it's the very first place to start. We even have a neurologist here. His first approach is always to have the patients have chiropractic care before he starts into more radical pain management kinds of things. So, even the medical community, many of them beginning to understand, take the conservative approach, then you look at drugs, and then you look at surgery as a last resort. And even then it's questionable, as you were pointing out, to the effectiveness. We've got to get this message out. We've got to get the media to break down this barrier they have against this kind of information, protecting themselves and protecting their advertisers, which are primarily big pharma dollars. So the great thing about the internet, we can put this information out, you can share it with your friends. And as Dr. Smith and I would always say, well, you may start because you had a back problem. Chiropractic care is so much bigger than that. And we'll be talking about that in some of our segments. So it may be a starting place, but ultimately it's about high performance and wellness and keeping yourself and your family well throughout the course of your lifetime.